to DFS Army, Geeks Vegas Lines, NFL Breakdowns podcast, where we break down all the games of the Week 2 NFL slate from a DFS and now betting perspective. My name is Kevin Allen. I am your host with the most today, aka the Geek. With me today, I've got my man, Long Sez, the season-long GOAT. What's up, my man?
Hello. Here to do it again. Enough action to get me back doing this with you again in Week 2, baby.
I love it. You've been crushing season long, some of those preseason predictions. I mean, I still remember it wasn't that long ago that you were saying Lamar Jackson as the potential number one fantasy quarterback this season. So, hey, let's see if that prediction comes true.
So far, so good. 1 for 1.
All right. And I've got my man, Ryan Besh, a.k.a. FightOn, from DFS Army's Beat the Bookie service. He is a quantitative analyst, a model builder, a bookie crusher, and he is the leader of the DFS Army Beat the Bookie team. So Ryan's going to break down these lines for us and give us a little sharp action. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be a part of this podcast.
Hell yeah. Excited to have you on here. Get a little bit of that sharp, better perspective on some of these games. And, of course, I have to mention that the DFS Army Geeks Vegas Lines podcast is sponsored by Fantasy Draft Rake Free DFS. So let's just get right into it, guys. Alan, what do you got for us, man?
All right, guys, we're going to start off with a Thursday night bonanza. Tampa Bay is going to go visit Carolina. The line is Carolina is going to be hosting with a 6.5 opening line. The total is 50.5. I'm excited to hear what you guys think from a betting perspective and also from a DFS. Who are the relevant players?
Ryan, take it away, man. What do you got?
Yeah, from a betting perspective, there hasn't been much sharp action on this game. There's been no steam moves or reverse line movement. The one thing to say is that there's been a lot of sharp money coming in on Carolina. They have 83% of the bets and 95% of the money. So clearly most people are backing Carolina, the public, and the sharps themselves. The total has been kind of a mix of both, not really any signs there. But definitely everyone's going after Carolina.
Why do you think that is? You think it's just that they saw Jameis Winston in week 1 and they think he's complete garbage? Or is there actually some sort of difference in quality of teams here? Because to me, I see these teams as kind of equal. I thought 6.5 was a big line.
Yeah, I think that you're seeing kind of an overreaction to week 1. Carolina showed that their end result being only losing that game by 3 is a mistake of a line. They were pretty much down by double digits the entire game. Los Angeles was in complete control. So yes, there might be some value on Tampa Bay coming back, but they're a garbage team in general. So it's hard to pick between these two teams.
I'm gonna, one of the things I heard about Tampa, or one blurb that actually affected me quite a bit in the post game after Tampa's debacle this past week was Bruce Arians talking about how Jameis Winston has been in basically one offense for his entire NFL career, 9 years, right? And he says, so it's kind of like taking a person and trying to remold them and teach them things, like basically teaching an old dog new tricks in terms of trying to teach Jameis Winston, to kind of see the offense the way that Bruce Arians wants him to see it. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those risks that we need to really keep in mind just in general when offensive schemes change for these quarterbacks, how they might not just be as comfortable in those early weeks. So I think this is a lot of what we saw from Jameis Winston last week. And I don't have any reason to believe that he's going to be completely over those issues come week 2. What do you say, Sez? You starting Winston in your fantasy team?
Yes, I am. I think that it's bombs away. You get good Winston with bad Winston, and these are the type of weeks you're going to have. I think that there's no reason to change your outlook on the Tampa Bay receivers, which everybody was so high on preseason. Both of those guys went in the top 36 picks. Receivers are going to be volatile week to week anyway. Actually, Chris Godwin didn't embarrass himself. He looked pretty good, grabbing a bunch of passes. I just want to see them really start firing into O.J. Howard and into Mike Evans. Again, pass catchers are going to be volatile week to week, so I expect a big bounce back from them. I know a lot of people are high on Carolina defense because of bad Winston possibly showing up, and I think what you said is really smart, that a new system is like a wide receiver that goes to a team in the midseason. It takes a minute to get used to it, but I trust Arians as an offensive coach enough that they're going to get back on track this week from a fantasy perspective.
I agree. It'll eventually click in. Obviously, the play of the day here is going to be Christian McCaffrey. I mean, come on. So,
yeah, he had 100 yards rushing and 10 catches. There's only like a handful of guys that have ever done that. We're in a running back pass catching era right now. So most of those guys are in the last, 5-7 years, but it's just an unbelievable stat. I see Ryan getting excited over there a little bit about it. I mean,
Ryan, we bet in the over on like touchdowns for C-Mac in this game. Like what is this? Is this prop alive yet? Wait,
it's not alive yet, but one prop that is interesting is that right now the under is getting juiced pretty heavily for Christian McCaffrey under 6.5 receptions. So clearly Vegas and sharp bettors are thinking he's not going to have his 10 catch performance like he had on Sunday.
Well, I agree, but that goes along with just people kind of thinking that Carolina will dominate and not need to throw to him as much as they did last week, right? I mean, wouldn't that be? Yeah.
I mean, sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
And the other interesting prop from this game is Jameis Winston over 0.5 interceptions, minus 250.
What's the? You know what? I want to. I know implied probabilities kind of in my head, but I don't know exact. But are they saying that it's like a 80%, it's like a 75% chance Winston is going to throw an interception in this game? Is that about right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And Ryan, here's a question for you: Is that like an accurate percentage, or is that more like public perception baked into it?
These early lines. So when it is initially published, the betting public doesn't kind of go out and find the lines. They'll find it out on Sunday morning. They'll wake up. They'll see a player prop. If you're actively seeking them out, you know what you're looking for. So these early moves are really important.
So by you're saying the value is early in the week where they haven't really been massaged out yet by the public.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on, boys?
Yeah, I mean, from DFS point of view, this is a single game contest, which is a lot of fun. And I think in all formats, in all versions, Christian McCaffrey as your captain, as your MVP, as your whatever, is going to be the man.
All right. Excellent. A game that I'm looking forward to because Atlanta was really not great in their first outing, but they're going to be back in the Dome. They're going to get a point when Philly comes to town. That total is a 51. I like the over in this one. I think this has carnival shootout potential in it. Ryan, what say you from a betting perspective? Anything stick out here? Is Philly being is this game priced properly?
Yeah, so what we're seeing from kind of a steam move perspective was we saw Atlanta at the start of Sunday. They received a pretty strong, sharp move, steam move. But in the last 2 days, it's all been Philadelphia. So we saw a steam move at Pick'em and then another steam move today at Philly -1. So I think that the Sharps are backing Philly in this game, thinking that it's going to be an easy bounce back spot. And that's kind of where their heads are at. There's no real change in the over or under. And so we saw a little sharp action on the over, so I would kind of lean that way. And one stat that I saw was that over when the total is 50 or more, the over is like 65% in September. So when these games are priced, you're thinking early season jitters, but if Vegas expects a high scoring game, you're going to get a high scoring game.
Okay, and it's now. Of course, I know what steam movement means because I'm no dummy. But explain it to the geek since he has no idea what it means. Just as an FYI, I don't either. Go ahead.
Right. So steam moves is when a large syndicate or a lot of sharp bettors throw a ton of money at one time on a single bet, and then basically what you'll see is they'll do that over a variety of sports books, and that will cause a line move within basically a couple of minutes over a large number of sports books. And so that's easy to track. It's easy to signal. And that kind of just shows that there's sharp action on one side.
you want to know what smart people are doing. It's something I followed for years for fantasy football purposes too, because one of the things we're trying to do is identify games that will play to the over or to the under to make our fantasy football decisions. And you guys are, and Ryan, you nailed it. Like, I did see some stats where early season high total games, I didn't see specifically play to the over so much as these are the types of games where you want to game stack the shit out of it for DFS purposes. Now, one of the fun things about, I mean, you went right to Philly Atlanta, which is a Sunday night game. One of the fun things about that game is, you know, there's only really one site that is including Sunday night games in their main slate, and that's Fantasy Draft, who is one of the sponsors of this podcast. So that's pretty awesome. And if you're playing there, you know, so this is a game you want to stack the shit out of. Number one, we saw Wentz looking incredibly sharp week one. Later on, I mean, putting on good numbers. Obviously, Washington, the Philly defense didn't look as spectacular with Washington doing a little damage early. That gives you this idea that the Falcons maybe can bounce back from their sort of miserable performance at the Vikings. They're at home. They play better at home. There's so much goodness going on. There's not a lot of defense on either of these teams happening right now. Tons of goodness in this game. I just love it all. I love the pass catchers and the quarterbacks. Not so much excited about the running games for either of these teams, but hey, works for me, man. Let's load up on Carson Wentz, Deshaun Jackson, Zach Ertz, the whole fucking crew. And then on the Atlanta side, same deal. Ridley, we've got my man Julio Jones got paid. He just got paid Friday night.
He deserves it, man.
Make that money. We're going to do it right. So, yeah, loves me some Julio. Love it all. Love this game. Game stacks galore.
Yeah, so I mean that's why I thought the under over was a little low. I just thought this has carnival potential all over it. Good one. Yeah, I went to those two games. I always like to do the standalone games first. Now let's get into the Sunday slate a little bit. Any other thoughts on this one before I move on? Anybody? All right.
An R&B song during that last breakdown.
Well, that's fine. We loved it
every single week.
All right. No, that makes sense. This one we're talking about here is San Francisco is going to go visit Cincinnati. Cincinnati's actually a favorite at home. I can't believe it after all of the people were bashing them, saying they're going to be the worst team in the NFL in the preseason. Oh, wait, there was one podcast that was saying Cincinnati was being underestimated. And you know which one that was, Ryan? That was this one right here. We thought Zach Taylor, the coach coming from the Sean McVay tree, we didn't say it was a given, but we thought, hey, it's a possibility this could actually be a good offense. The total is 45. Cincinnati is getting a point at home in San Francisco. I'm excited for this one. And John Ross is going to be a very popular pickup on the season-long fantasy football wire. I've heard some crazy takes saying when AJ Green comes back, John Ross is not going to be relevant anymore. We disagree with that fully. We think John Ross will be helped because nobody in the NFL does what he does. A take the top off, flip the field, game changer. How are you seeing this one from a betting perspective?
I'm just glad John Ross is healthy. For coming from a Pac-12 school, coming from USC, I watched John Ross blow the top of every team, and I really hope that he does well and stays healthy. In terms of a betting perspective, this line seems to be moving towards a pick'em on either side. If a team gets to -1, -2, sharps or steam moving the other side. Just want to take with the dog in the game. In terms of the total, there's not much movement. It's a little trending towards the over, but not much. Definitely playing towards just a pick'em game.
Yeah, and it's before I get your thank you. And before I get that DFS perspective from you, the other thought that the Geek and I were talking about is that wide receivers often break out in what year, Geek?
Yeah, year 3.
Year 3. What year is this for John Ross?
I mean, it's year 3, but I mean, let's face it, he's been hurt, so I don't know.
But I'm saying hurt. But last year he flashed his talent. Even though he had a terrible year, he scored 7 touchdowns, and he was under the wraps of a Marvin Lewis is dragging him down. I mean, that has been proven to be a terrible offense. Now we finally get a coach in there with offensive-minded, unleashing him. Year 3, sky's the limit. Talk to me about, can we use John Ross in DFS, or is it going to be too chalky of a play?
All right, so my deal with week 1, this is a very important point. Week 1 to week 2, right? Everybody wants to get cute and say, I don't. The first thought that goes in your head as a DFS player, we're contrarian minded, right? So we say, I don't want to chase the week one. I want to be a sharp player. I don't want to chase the week one points with some of these guys. I'm going to be cute, and I'm going to go back to things I thought before the season that didn't come true in week one, but I kind of think they're going to come true in week two. So we're going to have to make a lot of decisions like that next week. And I say, fuck that. Okay, let everybody outsmart themselves, and we're going to play it straight. If John Ross was getting targeted deep like crazy for his team week one, why the hell wouldn't that happen again this week? Let everybody else get cute. Yes, I'm going to play John Ross. As a matter of fact, I think what we saw in week one was that Tyler Boyd isn't quite what we thought he was going to be. He seems to be more of a possession guy for this team, whereas they've got my man Johnny Ross, my man Ross going deep. So yeah, I'm going back to that. He's not too expensive yet, and I'm going to trust my eyes and what we saw in week one, that it wasn't a fluke. I just want to ask you one more question. I don't mean to make this a John Ross segment, but do you think that the NFL, because for a while, for the last 3 years, it's just been dink and dunk, Julian Edelman, boring. Let's get down the field, 10 yards. Okay, let's do it again. Because a lot of teams saw the Patriots win Super Bowls like this. Do you think now with the new pass interference rules, you can't even touch the receiver, you can actually go back and replay it and challenge it, that teams are just taking more shots down the field, and just by total chance, they're unlocking guys with 4.2 speed they drafted 9th overall and they can throw down the field? Do you think this is going to be a new trend? I mean, either one of you, Ryan, do you think that we're going to see more of this, Geek? That's a Ryan question, because that would be a plays to the over sort of bent for just general betting purposes, where maybe there's going to be some new scoring trend where we did see a lot of quarterbacks throw for 300 yards last week, more than usual. So, I mean, Ryan,
Andy Dalton did.
We bet in the over this year, man. We going heavy on the over?
I think that you have to pick your spots. I think the over in high-scoring games is definitely somewhere to go. I think the fun thing that we're seeing is that in old times, 20, 30 years ago, college systems took a look at what pro systems were doing to emulate. But now we have a time where pro systems look to college and say, oh, the spread or the read pass option, that's working. We're going to bring that into our game. And so, so as we see in kind of college game, it's all about explosive plays. And whoever has the most explosive plays is usually going to win. And we're starting to see that as these NFL offenses kind of become more modern.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Geek, how about on the San Fran side? Who am I starting? Any of the San Fran receivers? Any of these running backs? Is Garoppolo cheap enough in DFS? Is he worth it?
No, Garoppolo still seems a little bit out of sync. He was out for a year. And from my eye test last week, these things, when you talk about rust and knocking the rust off, it's very difficult to tell how long that's going to take. 1 week, 2 weeks of actual contact, couple weeks. But I'm not comfortable necessarily with Garoppolo as any sort of a cash game play or anything where I want to have a lot of exposure to him in high dollar amounts or anything like that. I saw a guy that was a little bit out of sync in week one. I also think the San Francisco receiving corps is not completely settled. Even as of now, we saw Pettis sort of just get completely overlooked. Last week, I don't know if he had more than 2 or 3 targets the whole game. I certainly like Kittle here. That's the only real weapon. And Matt Breida as the 2 weapons on the San Francisco side that interest me. Breida in particular with Coleman out. Obviously, there are some workload concerns for him as well with Mostert and some other names that might come in to spell him on the goal line. But I do think that Breida has always been the most talented guy on that backfield, but he's a little small, not a guy who you expect to get a ton of workload, but he's cheap on the DFS side. So, 15, 16 touches for him.
Yeah, I mean, Burrito is like, if you watched him last year, he was unbelievable. He would just come in and dominate games, and then he would look like he'd be out for the season with some of these hits. You know, remember that scene? We talked about this in Terminator 2, when they would just like slash the Terminator in half, and he would split, and you'd think he's dead, and then he just like kind of melts back together and gets up, and I mean, that was Matt Breida last year. They would slaughter him, and he'd get back up with like a torn ACL and drag himself into the end zone. All right, I'm looking forward to that game. That's going to be one of the games I want to watch standalone, because I want to see if Cincinnati's for real. Moving on. Minnesota is going to go visit Green Bay. Green Bay had a horrible outing, very boring looking team in the first week. They are going to be favored at home, which surprised me. I thought this would be closer to a pick 'em. Green Bay is getting some points, 2.5, under over 45.5. Do either one of you, can you talk me off a cliff here? I invested heavily in Packers in the early rounds, specifically Devontae Adams. I thought Aaron Rodgers was being underpriced in the fantasy draft community. It didn't look good in week 1, or is that just Chicago's defense is so dominant? What are the bettors doing in this game, Ryan?
Yeah, so we've seen kind of so another concept is called reverse line movement. And that's where the public likes to back a certain bet a lot. So 60% of the bets or more are on a certain bet, but the line moves the other way, signaling that a sharp syndicate or a sharp person is going in there and betting a ton of money on the other side and fading what the public is thinking. And what we saw is yesterday, we saw a reverse line movement on the over. So as you say, everyone's thinking, oh, Green Bay is going to score 10 points, 14 points. It's going to be another low-scoring game. There's some sharp syndicates that are saying, no, this game's going to score a lot of points. And we also saw a reverse line movement on Green Bay. So teams are saying Green Bay is just going to snap back. It was clearly Chicago's amazing defense, his first game jitters for Rodgers and his new offense, and he's going to jump back right into form this week.
Wait, is the sharp better saying that, or is the public thinking that, and the sharp better is thinking, no, this will be a high-scoring game?
No, so the public better is saying this is going to be a low-scoring game, and Minnesota is just going to run Dalvin Cook till he dies, and it's going to be a low-scoring Minnesota win. The sharp bettors are saying, no, it's going to be a Green Bay high-scoring game.
Geek, what's going on with this one from a DFS perspective? Because Kirk Cousins, I think, threw like 10 passes. It's something ridiculously low. It wasn't even. It was like not even teen level passes. I mean, they literally ran the ball, like you said, until Dalvin Cook's wheels are going to fall off here. Are we going to get like 50 carries again? Is this the only NFL team that it just refuses to pass the ball? Who you like in DFS?
That is not what's going on there. The Vikings accepted and did what they needed to do. They played a very smart matchup based game plan where they knew that the Falcons can't stop the run. And instead of doing what other stupid teams do and saying, well, I know they can't stop the run, but let me balance it or let me trick them by throwing a lot. They said, okay, you can't stop the run. We're going to run it up your ass. And if you can't score on us, we're going to keep doing it. So they just played a smart game plan. And it's a reminder, a lot of us going into that game thought Atlanta would be competitive. If Atlanta was competitive, they would have been throwing aplenty. But Atlanta couldn't do shit against this Vikings defense. And I don't know about that sharp better, but I'm kind of on team under here as well. Vikings defense is very, very good. And yes, have the Packers traditionally been able to score against them? Sure. Have they been, these are division rivals. They see each other all the time. But in the end of the day, the Packers, both of these defenses appear to be very good, including a very good, I said Vikings defense is excellent. The Packers defense also looks very good. I don't think it was a fluke that Chicago couldn't produce much offense against them. I actually think the Packers defense is better than advertised. And in that situation, they should be able to actually do a decent job of stopping Dalvin Cook. I'm not interested really in Dalvin Cook this week from a DFS perspective, or much less interested. His salary went up based on last week. This is a much tougher matchup for him, a much tougher defense. So, yeah, I'm kind of off of this game for the most part. I don't really see a whole lot of excitement for either team in any area. And with all of these games on the slate, I'm pretty much off this game completely week 2.
Does that mean that there's a possible low ownership buying opportunity, or just stay away? I mean, sometimes a bag of poop is a bag of poop.
There's always there's always a tournament. We'll check our DFS Army ownership projections at one point. And, if Devontae Adams is going to be 5% owned, I'm interested.
Yeah, you see, I'm the opposite of a sharp a daily fantasy player. I'm the guy. I'm the fish who throws in the $5 ticket, thinking I'm going to retire next week. But you know where I'm actually learning to get better? I've actually been playing a little bit of FantasyDraft.com, who is sponsoring this podcast. So FantasyDraft.com, the only rake-free daily fantasy site in the biz, has partnered with the Geeks' favorite restaurant, Hooters, to bring you the largest guaranteed rake-free contest lineup in the history of daily fantasy sports, including the $1 million Geeks' favorite fantasy football and restaurant Hooters kickoff, only on Fantasy Draft. You know what? Have you guys played any Fantasy Draft before I continue on to this? Because it is an awesome site. That contest is just unbelievable, and I love the whole rake-free thing. But remember, 100% of the entry fees are paid to the contest winners. Sign up at fantasydraft.com today with promo code ARMY, that's ARMY, and you'll get a free 7-day trial membership. Void where prohibited, must be 18 or older. This website, this subscription-based website, has actually gotten me excited about playing daily, because I just felt some of the other ones, like I said, I didn't really have a chance because of the rake. This one, I felt like even a fish like myself could have a shot. Can you talk to me a little bit about if you think I'm right?
First of all, a couple things about Fantasy Draft. Yeah, I love where I want that. I'm excited that they sponsored this because I want the community to support this concept. I think it's freaking awesome. I did a breakdown on DFSArmy.com, a bankroll management video that anybody can go to under the NFL tab, scroll down to basic training videos, and you can catch my bankroll management breakdown. And I talk about the difference. And Ryan, actually, I think you and I had was it you? No, it might have been someone else. But actually, I was talking this over with someone to understand what rake free means. Basically, if I'm playing against you, Sez, head to head, $10 a week, 10 weeks in a row, right? And I win 6 out of 10 times, right? If I'm playing with a rake, I'm basically broke even. So even with a 60% win rate, which is about as good as anybody could ever do, like no one really is much better. And it's a little better than break even. I'd be up like 6% or something on my money. That'd be my ROI. On rake free, I'd be up 20% on my money. So the difference in ROI is massive. And the two things I love most, I love DFS, especially rake free, and I love Hooters. So
as I said, that's your favorite restaurant.
When you combine those two things, they have the best fucking wings. I'm not kidding. Like, they got great wings.
Oh, they have food? They have food there?
And plump, juicy breasts. I mean, chicken, you fucking sickos. I'm talking about chicken breasts, man. Come on.
Yep. Well, it was good. Ryan knows about rake because he is someone who deals with the Vegas line, so he understands how powerful rake can be and hurting your win percentage. So if you can eliminate that rake and by playing fantasy draft, I mean, how huge is that? It's just it's a game changer.
It is a game changer, and I'm going to say one more thing because they charge a minor subscription fee. That's how they make their money. It's like a tenth of what the rake would be if you would play that. Like for 3,000 in entries, it's like $15, whereas I pay like 450. Like the amount is ridiculously lower. But what the hell was I going to say? Yeah, I
understand. It basically, if you're someone who likes to play every week, even just a couple entries, their small subscription fee makes a lot.
The last thing I wanted to mention, they're doing a Sunday Million contest every single week. Last week it had 10,000 entries worth of overlay. So on top of rake free, I just to understand. We're going to talk about overlay on another sponsor of this pod as well. But overlay is the gold standard of what we ever look for. And it only ever happens at the beginning of the season. If you guys aren't taking advantage of this, and this is not just but fantasy draft as well, there are some other sites that are getting overlay. We'll talk about it in a minute. But 10,000 entrants did not fill. That means there was $250,000 worth of free money in that $25 entry contest. So not only was it no rake, they added $250,000 as bonus money. If you can't make money in a contest like that, I want you to quit today. Go to DFS Army, beat the bookie, and start sports gambling. It's fucking easier. But if you can't make money in rake-free contests with massive overlay, then there's no reason to play. Like if you're a sharp gambler, you understand. You take as much of that action as you could possibly get because it's rare and it's a gift. It's a special gift, like mana from the heavens.
All right, all right. Moving along though, that is well said. I think well said. My favorite and most interesting game of the week for good reason from a line movement. New England off of that huge win in Pittsburgh is going to go visit Miami, who look like they were Florida Central. And this line, I thought in my head was going to be about 14.5. Ryan can talk to me a little bit about where it opened, but it got bet up quickly to 18.5. It might even be more by the time I typed it in with an under over 47. Ryan, take me through. It's only Wednesday. Today's Tuesday. No, today's Tuesday, isn't it? What's today's? It's early in the week, folks. It's Tuesday, and the line has moved points, multiple points. Talk about this one, Ryan.
Yeah, so this line opened at around 14 and a half, and there was easy, sharp steam moves on New England. So there was a steam move at 11 a.m. from 15 and a half to 16. There was a sharp move an hour later that moved it from 16 and a half to 17. And then even further, there was another movement a few hours later from 17 to where it sits now at a whopping minus 19. So one thing to consider is that we had in our Beat the Bookie Slack, we had a member mentioned that when a dog is plus 15 or more at home, they cover about 70 to 75%. So yes, while we kind of expect Miami to be bad, this massive amount of points at home, you know, if this was in New England, this line would suggest it's minus 25, which for two pro systems, whichever way you shake it, there's definitely value on the underdog.
So how comfortable are you're taking Miami if it stays at 19, correct?
I think it goes even higher, honestly. We did see a steam move or a reverse line movement start to move in Miami's favor as the public now starts to back New England and move them higher. But I could easily see this going to 20, even 21. I mean, this is still going to go up just from everyone seeing what Lamar Jackson did to them.
Oh yeah. No, this is a game I'm on. I mean, it always is hard. It's stomach wrenching when you take the big underdog home favorite and New England comes out and like opening drive just puts one in the end zone. It's like, oh no, this is what I thought it was going to be. But Geek, where's the fantasy goal going to come from a DFS perspective? This looks like a game with Antonio Brown returning. Are people going to be on him? Should they be?
I think it's a little sketchy to play Antonio Brown week one with the new team. Although he'll get his, and he's a little underpriced. But here's my total view of this game. Right, the line is telling us New England, massive favorites, are going to come out, hand it to Sony Michel. He's going to smash through the Swiss cheese crap Miami team and just like put the beating on, because we know Belichick plays matchups, and he'll look at a game like this and be like, these guys can't stop the run anyway. We'll just run it down their throats and smash it in their face. And we don't even have to disguise it like we did in week one, where they didn't want to play their I can't make receptions back because they figured the Steelers' defensive line was too good for that kind of game plan. So they wanted to bring their dual threat pass catching guy in Rex Burkhead out. But more importantly, overreactions, recency bias. Okay. Yes. Did Miami get smashed by Baltimore? Guess what? Baltimore's defense is fucking great. Not good. They're great. Okay? And they're a team that's built to smash a team like Miami, who just couldn't handle both the offensive production and a really, really high quality defense coming at them. You know, New England, very good team, but you know what happens when you kind of think you're coming in here to smash a team? You kind of loosen up a little bit. You know, night before the game, you know, you're not sticking to your discipline. You're not really coming out fired up at all. You're kind of thinking we're here to smash these losers and, you know, whatever. Now, Miami has Ryan Fitzmagic at the helm still. They have quality talent. As bad as everybody's talking about how bad Miami is, and yes, they're not a good team, but they have talent on this team. They have good wide receivers. They have a running back that has some electric in his feet. They have, a couple of names. Wilson. They got Devontae Parker. They have some good players on this team, and they have enough talent to score a little bit. So, yes, if I was a betting man, I would definitely not be betting any kind of team to cover minus 19 or whatever. Now, if you have your survival league, you could feel confident to play the Patriots here, but
well, from a Survivor perspective, and we've been doing a Survivor segment on the podcast, depending on what the ownership level is, if the ownership is like 50% or above, and maybe even like 45% and above, we're totally fading this game because Miami has had some decent luck against New England, especially at home in the hot weather. This could end up being a complete fade for Survivor. What do you think about that?
I think we agree that in Survivor, you should always fade the most obvious game of the week, just because you know that
Depending
shit is
on-
taken out. I mean, depending on the week, but you know that's how Survivor works. 1 week, the clear, obvious game is going to take out 70% of the crowd. So I don't know if this one's that game. But...
Well, Ryan, what do you think? What would you project Survivor percentage will be on for New England? How many percent of a 10,000 person pool would be on there?
Yeah, I would say it's probably not as high because people want to save New England for the later in the year. I think there are spots where you can take other teams this week that you can kind of avoid taking New England, which is normally a guaranteed win where you can take them later in the season to kind of set yourself a nice run to the money.
Yeah, we talk about Survivor strategy on the podcast as well, and we say we don't recommend, I'm going to put this in air quotes, saving teams, because sometimes when you save teams, you're out. There's no tomorrow in Survivor. But you're right. I think that the public will think like that.
Right. But you also have Houston -9 against Jacksonville and Gardner Minshew. So you do have other outlets, and you have, Baltimore -13.5 against Arizona. There's plenty of good options to take this week that I don't think ownership is going to be too high on one team.
It will be very interesting to see. Anything else from a DFS perspective, Geek? I like the rookie Preston Williams as a punt play, my wide receiver 3. Is that, it's, especially if they have to throw late in the fourth quarter, is that viable?
I think I don't have any issue with any of these Miami offensive weapons in this game. They're at home. Again, this is not a defense that is as I don't want to say they're bad. Patriots defense is very good, and they have elite cornerback play. But, I mean, the way that I don't really know the way that the traditional Miami offense worked. There was a lot of short passing and a lot of different guys in there. So while I'm not super excited about any one pass catcher from this Miami team, I don't mind the idea of playing Ryan Fitzpatrick a little bit. I don't mind the idea of even Kenyon Drake here a little bit in tournaments. Again, not anything I'm messing around with in any sort of cash games, but in tournaments, yeah, I think there's a little bit of potential on that Miami side to sort of surprise the world, and the ownership will be basically 0 on all of their players, which makes it interesting from a tournament point of view. And on New England, they continue to spread the ball around to the point where it's wildly difficult on a week-to-week basis to really play any of them in daily fantasy. I mean, is it Gordon? Is it Antonio Brown? Is it White? Is it Sony Michel? We don't know.
And your favorite, Julian Edelman.
Yeah, and Edelman, can't forget Edelman. He feels very comfortable in Southern Florida.
So we got some ground to make up here. This is a game that I think is going to be an interesting game. Seattle is going to go visit Pittsburgh. I want us all I want to hear the betting perspective and the DFS perspective. Try to see if you can give me a lightning round for these next 2 games. 3.5 point favorite, Pittsburgh at home, total of 46.5. What do you see here, Ryan? Ryan, your mic is muted, just so you know. What we'll do is we'll start with Kevin with DFS perspective, and we'll circle back around to Ryan in one moment. Go ahead, Ryan. Tell me what are the players that we should be looking for from a DFS perspective.
I mean, I'm keeping an eye on Juju Smith-Schuster and that toe issue. If I didn't know that he had that issue, if I knew he was healthy, I was actually very interested in Juju at home. Once again, coming off a disappointing game, the DFS community is going to be rushing towards all of the guys that did well week 1. And a brutal matchup for Juju in week 1. I have concerns about the toe, and that's why I didn't click him into my initial cash lineup, because he's a little underpriced for a home matchup.
I love Juju in this game. I think that New England last week, what they traditionally do is they game plan the top weapon out of the game, and they say, beat us with your other guys. And that's exactly what happened. New England's defense is actually good. My first pick of the week is I locked Juju into my lineup. So you're saying that's actually a decent play.
It's just the toe. I mean, if I can't know injuries, right? So
that'll keep the ownership percentage down, though.
Yeah, but I don't look at that. I don't want a guy with a busted toe. I want a guy who can run. So assuming that he's fine, and I do think he will be fine, that's what I'm talking about. I love Juju, though, for the low ownership, home, everybody off him, and exactly what you said. Patriots take your best player out of the game. For Seattle, I mean, and the other guy that James Conner, the Terminator, of course, also coming off a bad game, completely overlooked this week. No one's going to be on him, and I like that. So as much as I was saying early on, trust my eyes, listen, that was a tough matchup on the road. This is a home game for the Steelers. Yes, the Seattle defense is okay, but not that great, not on the road. And I've seen these two teams shoot out against one another many a time in the past. Seattle side, Lockett, what did he get? One target, not exciting, not excited about that last week, but we love what Chris Carson did. Not as easy of a matchup here at Pittsburgh, but I love that they're throwing to him. He's still a little underpriced on a lot of sites, so that's a little bit where I'm going. And maybe this is the week, in tournaments to consider a little Russell Wilson, combination, stacks, but not going too crazy with that because that team, like I said, does not like to throw it that often.
All right, that sounds good. Ryan, talk to me a little bit quickly about Seattle. They had more than they could handle at when Cincinnati came into town. Were they just not a good team? Because I thought they were going to be one of the sneaky teams to maybe win that division.
Yeah, I wouldn't overreact week one. There's nothing really that's going on in terms of the betting. This is a perfect game for me to rush through. The only sharp action is that there's a decent amount of money being put on Seattle's money line in this game as sharp bettors are kind of taking that value, seeing this game as more of a pick 'em.
Cool. Thank you. I think that's they're saying that these two teams are kind of equal, so it might as well take the favorable odds.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. You know what? I think I'm writing this one down as he's going because I think that's an interesting perspective that I didn't think of yet on that one. So, all right, NFC East, Dallas going to go visit Washington. Washington came to play last week, guys. Everyone thought they were going to be a league doormat. They actually came to play. They're going to get 5 points at home. Dallas looked really good, though. This is an interesting game. I did not get this line correct. Ryan, talk to me a little bit about, you got the total at 46. Dallas looks like one of the elite teams. Is Washington not a pushover? How do you see this game going from a betting perspective?
Yeah, so from a betting perspective, the line and the sharp are there are different sharp people on either side. So we're seeing a lot of steam moves on Dallas. We're seeing a lot of steam moves on Washington. One thing that's important to note is that Dallas is an extremely popular public team, and usually I would like to take the other side. I don't think Washington is a pushover. They played well in the first half, but the second half against Philly does worry me because they really couldn't do anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. They did run out of gas in the second half, but I think they built some confidence from that matchup. Geek, Washington. We should pull the clip where we said on our season-long podcast, there is sneaky value in these Washington rookie receivers. And we actually preferred Case Keenum to open the season as the quarterback to unlock the value. Darius Geis is out. I see a pass-catching running back that I want to put in my DFS lineup. Talk to me about Washington first before you go into Dallas, which seems a little bit more obvious.
Listen, I'm not overreacting. Case Keenum, still not good. So let's not go crazy. But I do like this McLaurin kid. He's 3,800 on DraftKings this week and generally just min-priced or super cheap across the board. 7 targets, 5 receptions last week. And he does appear to be the top guy in this pass-catching corpse. Trey Quinn, the chef, the other chef, Trey Quinn, different from Traquan.
That was the chef was Raekwon on Wu-Tang.
No, but Traquan Smith from the Saints is the original chef, but Trey Quinn is his sous chef, so to speak. So anyway, Trey Quinn looks more like a slot guy, not super exciting, but I'm cautioning to get too excited about this quarterback play of that's going on with Case Keenum. We know who he is. We know he's not that good, right? But you mentioned a certain running back who does very well in games, especially when his team falls behind. That is my man, Chris Thompson. And, I have to throw a shout out to Adrian Peterson. Now, this Dallas defense is very, very good, and they're good against the run and all of that. But Washington's at home. Peterson min salary on DraftKings this week, 3,400. And I'm mentioning DraftKings prices. We love FanDuel. We love Fantasy Draft too. So on Fantasy Draft, it's just about the same. It's double that, which is how Fantasy Draft salaries work. But the guy is super cheap, as is Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson's going to get you PPR points. So I don't mind that area for the Washington side of this game, or a little bit of McLaurin, who I think is the best of the wide receiver group for Washington. Now,
I know people hate rookie wide receivers, but when you are the number one wide receiver on a team that's always going to be trailing, you're going to get force-fed 10 targets every time, and you're going to likely turn that. And Terry McLaurin's actually good. We liked him throughout the whole process. In rookie drafts, we were taking him in round 2, not round 3 where he was going. So do you think that that's sustainable? Is he going to be are people looking at him as more of like a, hey, he just got lucky once? Is there an opportunity here? You really do like him for DFS?
Yeah, I don't think he'll be high owned. See, I don't want high owned turds in my lineup. So like if we found out that Terry McLaurin is going to be 35% owned this week because he's coming off a great week, that we might see that with like Jamison Crowder, although I think it's a little justified. But or Danny Amendola, there's a couple of names this week that will pop up for massive target loads that will probably become over-owned for that reason. I don't think Terry McLaurin is one of them. I don't think he'll have high ownership at all. It doesn't help, like I said, that Dallas's defense is very, very good. And while I don't have a cornerback matchup chart in front of me, I do have this lingering memory in the side of my brain that Dallas does have an elite cornerback on their team. So while I don't have a chart of that to prove any of that, I do believe they have somebody who's pretty good. But, so I'll have to look at that a little more in depth before making definite decisions. But I like McLaurin. I will have exposure to him for sure this week in my daily lineups. Now, on the flip side for Dallas, the question is, when will they unleash the beast, right? Is Zeke ready to be unleashed week 2? I lean towards probably yes. Full week of practice, got some snaps in last week, knocked the rust off, so to speak. So I lean towards yes, but there is absolutely lingering risk of the team kind of not wanting to give him too many touches or too many snaps.
But how many times is Zeke going to be this low owned again off a bad game? I think this is the perfect time to use Zeke.
From ownership, yes, but from a salary point of view, he's as studly priced as he ever is. So you're not getting a discount. Yeah,
but I don't think you need it. I think that the discount comes in the form of the ownership. I think Zeke's in for a mega monster. I think Dallas comes in and it shows its dominance. So that's a really good breakdown of that. And how about Michael Gallup? I mean, there was a lot of preseason hype. He delivered a monster game. Some sharp people I know even like him to outproduce from a yardage perspective Amari Cooper just based on the health concerns alone. Can we use Michael Gallup in DFS?
I don't love his salary. I'm going to throw up a pause button on the entire pass catching core of this Dallas team. Randall Cobb had a great game. Michael Gallup had a great game. Amari Cooper had a great game last week. Dak Prescott had a great game. But I'm going to stick with those guys exclusively in Dak Prescott focused stacks, as opposed to kind of looking at them as one-off plays that I'm interested in just in general to mix into my lineups. And mainly because I think a lot of their success had to do with Dallas just deciding, hey, we're not going to run that much because Zeke is still getting his sea legs under him. So let's show a pass-oriented attack. And they've showed, hey, if we try to do this, we now have the weapons. Gallup being a second year, Cobb being an excellent slot guy, and Amari Cooper being a guy who is a lot better than what he looked like when he was with the Raiders because the Raiders suck. And all of a sudden, you've got a pretty solid pass-catching corpse for Dallas here.
All right. A game that I will pretend doesn't even exist, because when you talk about a Joe Flacco versus Mitch Trubisky lineup, Chicago going to visit Denver, I don't want to hear you talk too much about this one because I might actually fall asleep. There cannot be anything good from a fantasy perspective. Ryan, you're going to have to tell me also, is this a game where even though the total is super low, it's in Denver, the total's 40.5, I feel like this could be one of those 13-10 games. Talk to me a little bit about the total, and then also a little bit about game flow and where the bettors are looking at this game, or if they're just totally ignoring this game.
Yeah, so living in Chicago, I had a lot of conversation with people thinking Trubisky's a legit QB and had to convince them otherwise. Hopefully last week's performance convinced them a little bit of that. In terms of the total, we're seeing 48% of the bets on the over, but 83% of the money is on the over. So people are expecting a higher scoring game than what it's currently sitting at 40.5. In terms of the spread, the public is on Chicago. They see Denver. They see them lose to the Raiders, and they're like, Chicago is going to have to bounce back and travel a mile high and get a W.
Yeah, that makes sense, everything you said there. I mean, nobody also likes to bet the under. I mean, it's just not a fun bet to root for punts. I mean, it just makes for horrible TV. So I can understand on a low total. It just almost seems like the number is begging you to take the over. And when I see that, I sometimes think that it's mispriced. So I might just take a little flyer on the under here. And you're a Chicago fan. Are you a Bears fan, Ryan?
I'm not. So I'm originally from LA, and so I am a Rams fan.
Oh, okay. I got it because, Chicago, I mean, it was a great move that they traded up to get Trubisky and passed on Deshaun Watson and Mahomes. So I always think that was an interesting trade up. And what's funny is I learned a little bit about that pick. So San Francisco, they got an extra third round pick, which they ended up trading away. So San Francisco passed on all three of those QBs, Watson, Mahomes, and Trubisky, then got an extra third round pick, which they traded to New Orleans. And you know who New Orleans took with that pick? Oh, some player named Alvin Kamara.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So San Francisco didn't do well with those trades. All right. Talk to me about DFS here. Who can I start? David Montgomery. I drafted this guy in the third round.
No. Even in your season long, you got to put him on the bench. There's no starters coming out of this game outside of Chicago defense. So that's pretty much it. You can play, if you have Denver defense on your team, you can play them. If you have Chicago defense, play them heartily. And that is it for this game.
Good, because I don't even want to talk about this game, but I do think the under is an interesting bet. Hey, the other day you and I were talking about Super Draft, and you were explaining it to me. Can just talk to me and Ryan a little bit about that, because this seems like one of the coolest contests out there, the DFS Championships.
All right. Well, we've got two different things, both sponsors of the podcast. So we want to talk a little bit first about superdraft.io. Now, Superdraft is the newest daily fantasy site around. They're based out of Boston. They're well-funded. And here's the deal, guys. When a new site comes out like this, what they're doing is they're putting massive, massive amounts of overlay into their contest to attract people onto their site to get them playing there. That is not the norm in daily fantasy. As a matter of fact, last week they had a $125,000 contest. It did not even fill half of the spots. I was handcrafting lineups for that thing. Now, their unique twist to daily fantasy is that instead of salaries, they apply a multiplier to every player. So when you choose a player, there's a little multiplier next to them, and that is how many times their normal fantasy scoring you get for this player.
Wait, so let me just ask you a question. So my guess is that the QBs that would normally be lower salary get higher multipliers. So if I'm taking like a Jimmy Garoppolo, he'll have his fantasy points get multiplied quicker than say a Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes would be a 1.0x. In other words, the top guy, right? And then like last week, the best play was Lamar Jackson at 1.65. They actually had mispriced Goff at 2.0x, which was, in my mind, a complete just accident. But it sucked because fucking Goff, so we identified that value, but it sucked because Goff had a really shitty game. But in general, yes, they're applying a multiplier based on the expected fantasy scoring from each position group. And by the way, DFS Army has already created a full projection system, basically just taking our projections, applying those multipliers for all of their games. We've been crushing it. And I can't stress this enough. And this is just when there's overlay in the amounts and also a site which is completely not covered by most daily fantasy advice sites like ours, there's so much advantage to getting in early. This overlay will be gone in the next few weeks. I beg people in my channel this past week to jump in. We set up a deal with superdraft.io where if you use the link connected to this podcast in the description below, or if you just sign up there and use promo code ARMY, ARMY, they give you $10 in your account after you make your initial deposit. So give it a shot. There's a lot of free money. That contest with the overlay has a $25,000 top prize, and it will only get 3,000 or 4,000 entrants out of the 8,000 that can join. If you haven't done this, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, tweet that one out. I want to send that to some of my buddies that have been a little hesitant to get into DFS. They see the commercials, they want to, but this sounds like a contest that they have probably a plus chance of winning because they're pretty good at fantasy football. All right,
you almost can't lose. And the second thing I want to talk about is DFS championships. This is the final days to get into the DFS championships tournament. What is the DFS championships? First of all, dfschampionships.com, right? And basically, it's a hybrid of season-long and daily fantasy football where the contest is run through the Draftkings platform, but you put up either $50 or $150 to get into either one of the recreational league or the pro league, right? The $150 league is the big one. The $50 league is a small one. And, it's multiple weeks of basically they create a bunch of large contests with all the participants. Could be a couple hundred participants in the $50 one. We'll see how large it gets. And the smaller one could be about 100 or so. And they create a contest. You do 3 or 4 weeks of tracked entries in this contest. You get a cumulative score over 4 weeks. After that 3 or 4 week period, half of the pool is whittled out. And again, another 3 or 4 weeks of cumulative scoring over a second kind of period of time. It takes you 8 weeks in. Another half is out. So it's basically a long, full season long daily fantasy football tournament that highlights with a head-to-head bracket challenge, very similar to March Madness. Whittle your way down to a first place winner. About 20% of the total entrants will get paid out here, standard like any sort of DFS tournament. But again, instead of playing a 1 week, 1 day, couple hours contest for $50, you can actually play daily fantasy football for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on one entry fee and potentially win a nice massive prize at the end. So I like it because I think it also trains your mind to do cash game entries, because when you're trying to beat a 50-50 contest, you're really not getting cute or silly with your lineup. You just want to kind of build what I'd call a cash game lineup, one that's better than half of the field. And I think it's really, really important to concentrate on that.
I can hear you're passionate about it, and for you passionate DFS players, this sounds like a great contest. And if you're new to the hobby, to the sport, I don't know, with the activity, you definitely should jump in there too. It's a great way to do it in a crazy maniacal way. We're going to move on here. Ryan, there's a game that I just don't understand. I got the line completely wrong when I was looking at it. And who the hell are the Buffalo Bills to be favored on the road? The Giants, yes, they are dumpster fire. I think they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. They have some good players, but who's Buffalo to be favored on the road by 2.5 points with an over-under of 42.5?
Yeah, so going away from your call here, the big move is on the over. So we've seen a ton of sharp action on the over. There's 37% of the bets have been on the over, which means that most of the public is thinking this game is going to be low scoring, but 65% of the money is on the over. So people are expecting points in this game. In terms of the spread, it's pretty even, 50-50 down the middle. Teams don't know really what to do. I think that me personally, I've been a Josh Allen fan. I think he is a great player to run naked in basically every single DFS week, just due to his running ability. But, Buffalo's not a bad team, and they actually came back against the Jets and gave a good showing last week.
Yeah, no, I like Josh Allen too. I like the way he plays. I think that new receiver, Smokey John Brown, who had 10 targets, is the perfect wide receiver pairing for him. His style of play lines up perfectly with that receiver, and I like his hair on fire style. Geek, talk to me a little bit here about both sides. Barkley, Sterling Shepard, who's in the concussion protocol, Evan Ingram with a mega monster, a throbber of a game. Are the giant players? We like their skill players, but who should we be chasing? Who should be avoiding in this matchup?
All right. I mean, on the Bills side, I actually ran Allen to Sheriff John Brown in my cash games last week. I love John Brown. I like him in this matchup as well, although not as much. Again, the Giants do have some cornerback talent as well that we can get to, but Saquon Barkley stands out here. I don't think after last week's dud that people are going to be super excited to quickly pay up for this guy, but he went from a very, very difficult road environment didn't get a whole lot of touches. Crushed even with that. He didn't score a touchdown last week. 11 attempts, he got you 120 yards in a very difficult matchup. So Saquon Barkley's talent is rising to the top here, and he's showing why, even though he's on a pretty bad team across the board, he's going to have monster games all year. He just is the most talented. He's the fastest player, I believe, in the National Football League, or at least measured in running speed last week. They did a measurement. No one ran faster at any moment of any game than Saquon Barkley. So, I mean, and that includes cornerbacks and whatever. So Barkley is a fucking beast. We want to get all over this guy. And especially with Sterling Shepard potentially sidelined here, potentially not in there, they're going to need to throw a little more to Saquon. I love everything about him here. Pass catchers. Yeah, Evan Ingram, can he do the same? I mean, Buffalo's pretty good against the tight end, but whatevs. I don't think he's going to reproduce. I'm not sure I'm going to chase that game from last week, but the Giants have shown that they're going to pepper him with targets. We knew Evan Ingram was in a great matchup, though, at Dallas. And this matchup against the Bills, not as spectacular. And there's some other interesting plays a little bit cheaper. On the Bills side, yeah, a little more Josh Allen, sure. Price down from last week. He actually went down in salary a little bit. Okay. I'll accept that. And it does really seem to me that the clear number one wide receiver is John Brown. Although, Zay Jones is out there too, and Cole Beasley didn't do much last week, but
Cole Beasley had 8 catches.
The five receptions last week.
Was it 8 targets?
Yeah,
8
9
targets.
But they look to him a bit. I mean, so Beasley will be out there still cheap targets. I don't mind him either. I don't mind him. Zay Jones, I think even Zay might have done a little something in that Jets game. I'm not sure. No, nothing for Zay. Nothing.
I like what Ryan said too, that Josh Allen is a player that you can run out there by himself, naked, as you said. I think that's a really interesting way to put it, that you don't, because in DFS, I hear so much about pairing or correlation plays. And sometimes I just don't like the correlation plays, and I'm always looking for that QB that you just don't know who we could pair him with. So I think that's an interesting thought too. Geek, what do you think about that what Ryan said about putting Josh Allen out there without any correlative play?
Yeah, any of these guys that run exclusively, like a Lamar Jackson as well, although he did great with his pass catchers last week. But in general, running quarterbacks can be used without any sort of pairing. But what I do want you to do, if that's a tournament lineup, is find other correlations to get into your lineups that aren't connected to that quarterback. So that still doesn't mean you shouldn't use a running back opposing pass catcher combination, or maybe a running back wide receiver same team combo. You want to, if you're going to run a quarterback out there naked in your daily fantasy lineup, make sure that the rest of the lineup itself has correlations to sort of make up for the fact that you're running a solo naked quarterback out there. How do you think Josh Allen would look out there naked?
I mean, he's got to look better than me.
I think so.
I mean, that's a given. All right, moving on. We're going to go through the next two pretty quickly. Arizona, who looked like garbage for 3 quarters, came out in the fourth quarter and made everyone sigh a little breath of relaxation. They did it. They started targeting the receivers, and Kyler Murray looked the part. And they're going to go and visit Baltimore. Baltimore, who just crushed Miami in that first game. Crazy fantasy numbers went everywhere. Lamar Jackson, he's going to be a popular play. They're getting 13.5 points at home with an under over 46. Where's the betting number going to go for this one, Ryan?
Yeah, so last week we in our Beat Bookie Slack, we gave out Detroit -2.5 as a play, and that was a bad beat with them being up 17 at halftime, and Arizona climbed back to a tie. They instead of going for it on 4th down at the 50 in overtime, they decided to punt and basically just force a tie. Really annoying play. Whatever. On to this week.
Arizona thought they won the game, basically. I think they thought a tie was a win.
Yeah, exactly. So the one big move here is that there has been 5 steam moves on the over in this game. So it started at 41.5 and is currently up to 47. So there's just been a ton of steam movement on this game. 98% of the money bet on the total of this game has been on the over. People are expecting a highlight reel of the game, and I think that is what's going to happen as well.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting play. I really want to see what happens here with all the fantasy players too. Geek, who are we going to use in a DFS tournament? Are people going to be chasing Hollywood Brown? That seems a little bit like I would probably stay away. He'll probably won't be overpriced. Lamar Jackson's certainly going to be a popular play. Which hours is David Johnson back in the mix now? Do we trust him? Quickly tell me, because we have a bunch of games to do in the next 45 seconds. Tell me who I should or shouldn't play.
I'm just going to give you a great way to potentially stay away from bad wide receiver chalk, and that's just pair those guys up with their quarterback. So no, do I think you should put Hollywood Brown in your cash lineup this week? Absolutely not. He was only out there for some 20% of the total snaps for the team. He did all of his damage in a couple of plays. So that is a GPP only type of scenario in my book. I'll pair him up along with Andrews. I'll pair them up with Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson's in a great spot. I love this game from the Baltimore side scoring. I don't mind Ingram here either, although his price came up a little bit. So I like the Baltimore side of this game a lot, and Baltimore defense. I do not like the Arizona side very much. I think that it's one thing at home after the jitters are out to make a comeback against the hapless Lions, but it's a whole nother story. We're going on the road into Baltimore, nasty defense, taking on the Ravens. So as a rookie quarterback, no. So I am going to be staying away from Arizona, and my man, Kyler Murray, who I traded many first-round draft picks for in one of my dynasty leagues to get him in a 2-quarterback league. But that doesn't mean I am stupid enough to want to play him on the road at Baltimore in his second ever game as a National Football League professional quarterback.
Oh, if you were to pick one receiver from the Arizona who might be an interesting play, which one? I mean, Keyshawn Johnson got 10 targets. He didn't do much with them. Would you go back to the well on him, or just total stay away in tournament lineups?
No, it's actually probably Larry Fitzgerald. That's your best.
Didn't he look good? He looked good.
He always looks good. He's Larry Fitzgerald. So I always wonder, why aren't you throwing to Larry Fitzgerald?
Well, awesome. You know what it is that Larry Fitzgerald for the last 5 years has been like, oh wait, this is what it feels like when a quarterback has some accuracy. He's just been, late. It was pretty cool to see him actually back in the mix again, doing what he usually does.
So good, throw it to him. But I'm not going there. I'm not going there this week.
All right, moving on. LA Chargers. We're finally saying it. LA Chargers instead of San Diego Chargers are going to go visit Detroit. Detroit's going to get the full 3 at home. The under over is 47. I want to hear this. To me, is an interesting line because I thought it would be bigger. Talk to me a little bit why it is only 3. I thought this one would at least be 3.5, 4. I'm all over LA Chargers in this game.
Yes, so I think, like we were talking earlier, this is a very misleading final score for Detroit because they did basically bottle up Arizona the first 3 quarters. Then Kyler came back and kind of dominated it, and the Chargers looked okay against Indianapolis, and whether they're, Brissett looked good, but is he Andrew Luck? Who knows? So I think that the line is showing pretty solid value on Detroit in this game. There's been some reverse line movement. The Chargers are seeing 80% of the bets, but only 60% of the money. And so we're seeing kind of some value on Detroit, and we're seeing reverse line movement headed their way, which has driven the line from +3 to +2.5. In terms of the total, it's pretty non-existent on which way it's moving. It's a little headed towards the over, but there's no real signal there.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I thought too. I mean, Detroit is just one of these like garbage teams. I just don't like them. I don't like the way they're coached. LA Chargers, they didn't look great in that first one, but I like their players. They're exciting. I think that, again, I like that team enough, and I like the running back combination they have there, that I will be putting a few bucks on them, only giving up the 3. I know that sometimes a home favorite, you go back and forth, but just sometimes you have that gut feeling, you go after that. DFS perspective, is there anyone you like here, Geek? I'm curious to what you think on the Detroit side, if there's any players I can use. Oh, wait, is this the time that we're going to talk about TJ Hawkinson, our new favorite player?
I mean, I do love me some Hawkinson, but he's still a rookie tight end, and tight end is a very tough position in the NFL. And it's hard to do it 2 weeks in a row. So I'm not. No, somebody was asking me, are you lock buttoning Hawkinson here? Listen, this Chargers defense will funnel to the tight end position. Don't get me wrong. They have good outside corner play, and if you're trying to move the football against them, the tight end is a good way to try to do it. So Hawkinson in play, min salary on DraftKings, but for the Detroit, I want to more give a warning. And it's the same warning I was talking about most of the offseason, which was the hype show on Kerryon Johnson was too much. Okay, I had him ranked below everybody else's ranking. I don't have one share of him. I have my own mistakes that I made, but it wasn't with Kerryon Johnson. And the reason his hype show is too high is because C.J. Anderson looms large as a very, very talented share the backfield mate with Kerryon Johnson. So when it was LeGarrette Blount, it was like, all right, this guy fucking sucks. So eventually this coaching staff will realize Kerryon is just better than him in all aspects of football. But when it comes to C.J. Anderson's good. So that's a real threat. So stay away from Kerryon Johnson for me. I don't like losing red zone carries. I don't like losing goal line carries. I don't like any of that. I want my guy to score the touchdowns. As far as Danny Amendola, tons of targets last week. So maybe he's a nice, interesting little cash punt on DraftKings. Not a whole lot of touchdown equity out of that guy. On the Chargers side, again, I'm going to issue a word of caution on Austin Eckler. I like his play. I like the way they play him, in this Chargers offense, having that pass catching back. We all remember what Danny Woodhead did a few years ago. If you remember, most of Melvin Gordon's great games came in the passing game, not in the run game. And, so absolutely Eckler's going to get the juicy fantasy points producing snaps.
And Ryan, just so you know, Geek's been disrespecting your guy, my guy, Austin Eckler, all off season long. I was promoting taking him in the 5th or 6th round of fantasy drafts once it became painfully obvious that Melvin Gordon, you're out there. I know you're a Rams fan, but you've watched a good amount of Chargers football out there. I mean, from your eyeballs, is Austin Eckler, he's just a good running back.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good in the system. I mean, it's a system running back. I mean, the system is set up to make a running back shine. I don't see that there's much of a difference. If you make the NFL as a running back, you're going to be good. There's very little difference between kind of a pretty good and a good running back.
So Ryan's in the running backs don't matter category. So that's interesting. And I like always of getting different perspectives on that. Geek, how about Justin Jackson? He looked good even though he didn't get the carries. Do you think that there's a chance that Justin Jackson becomes playable? When he had the ball, he actually looked pretty good.
No, we don't play these guys. We need the touches. We can't take risks with our lineups like this. There's enough value out there. I don't want to fuck around with Justin Jackson, but I'm saying Austin Eckler will be high owned. And what you're saying about Justin Jackson is correct. He's still going to split touches with Justin Jackson. And Ryan knows very well, I talk about this all the time. Certain teams produce great scores from the running back position. The Steelers are one of those teams too. Like certain teams just don't. And so when people misjudge that or misconstrue that and think, oh, here's a good player and now he's going to start doing well. Or so, no, certain teams just don't produce points from the position no matter who is back there. So that's a lot more what it comes down to. The Chargers are a team that does produce. And again, this offense has been in play over there for many, many years. That's why I keep bringing up Danny Woodhead, because we can go back 10 years and they were doing the same thing. And Melvin Gordon, if you actually watch the games, most of his fantasy scoring came off of screens and off of these same plays that Austin Eckler is breaking. So yes, he is always in a good spot. But he's not getting that volume. And I'm a little bit, just like last week. Hey, listen, I was not on Austin Eckler very much because I was skeptical of his workload, and the skepticism was correct. He just did a lot with what he ended up getting. I mean, he did a fucking shitload with what he ended up getting. So
and he got it. And he got into the end zone a bunch of times too.
Yeah,
so
yeah, shitload. But it wasn't like the guy got 25 carries. We're talking about a guy in Eckler, and sorry, I'm going off on this game. It's just, I feel passionate. He got 12 carries. Okay, he got 7 targets, 6 receptions. Awesome. Couple touchdowns. Got a touchdown on that, 3 touchdowns in the game, but he got 12 carries for 58 yards. And if he doesn't break 2 long receptions for touchdowns, we're talking about a bust. Or not a great game. So he will do fine. I think he'll do fine here. He's a little 6,100. I'll probably get some exposure because, hey, we've seen what he can do. But I'm just cautioning on going all in at 6,100 on this player on the road when you did see Justin Jackson, and he did get a bunch of carries as well. So that's That's my only thing. I'm not trying to talk anybody too hard off of anything, but
Good.
Jackson got
I think that's a smart analysis. What you said there. Don't get overly excited or overexposed to Austin Eckler as the volume was low. He just happened to get into the end zone a few times. Jacksonville, the new thugs of the NFL. I mean, did you see that game? They had to hold players back. They're going to go visit Houston, who just looked unbelievable last night. Houston's getting 9 points at home against Jacksonville. Just before you break this one down from a betting perspective, Ryan, in the preseason, I put $25 on Deshaun Watson MVP to win $400. Do you like that bet?
Not really. I think it's hard to be MVP. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks who are up for the running that I don't know if Houston is going to be good enough for that to pay off.
But I like those odds, though. I mean,
that's a 20-1. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, he's not the favorite. He's not like Pat Mahomes, who was getting.
I would have rather you put it on Lamar Jackson before this week, where he was like 50-1.
You know what? That. Yes.
Hindsight's 2020, sadly.
Yeah, but you're right, though, because I did say to the Geek on this podcast preseason that Lamar Jackson would finish as the fantasy QB1, and that should have triggered that thought. See, that's why we need to have more of these conversations. So, yeah, so the odds okay on Deshaun Watson. But what you just said, you see, that's why I'm glad we have these conversations, because Lamar Jackson at more than double the odds was probably the better play. All right, break this one down for me. Is this line seems a little heavy? I like Jacksonville in this one, getting 9 on the road.
Yeah, so first off, Gardner Minshew is the most Jacksonville player to ever exist. Have you guys seen his press conference where he just looked like everything you would expect Florida to look like?
Be careful what you say here. Your co-host right here is from Jacksonville.
Oh, you are. So you have firsthand knowledge of what Jacksonville looks like.
Yes. I'm an ex-New Yorker, moved to Jacksonville.
Wait.
So
what does a person from Jacksonville look like?
Tell him, Ryan. I won't get offended.
You're not allowed to say it. That's like you have to be from Jacksonville to rip on Jacksonville. So tell me what a Jacksonville person looks like.
I live in Jacksonville. I'm from New York. We moved down here about 5 years ago. So no, but Ryan's getting sweat down the back of his neck now. He's a little nervous.
What is
this is the last podcast I'm on?
No, in fact, it's going to be the first of many.
Wait, is there a DFS Army bandana involved in the?
He would wear one. If you sent it to him, he would wear one.
He's talking about like the porn mustache. He's talking about all these other things.
His garb, the what he wore too. I mean, it's just the way he is. But he was an amazing player at Washington State in college, and this offense from a DFS perspective, I'll kind of give you from the Washington State offense. They were extremely dink and dunk. He would have extremely high efficiency, 80% completion rate games, throwing the ball 60 times, completing 50 balls. And when he took over for Foles, that's basically what he did in that offense. And so there is actually a very sneaky DFS spot here for his pass catchers to have those PPR points. But getting back to kind of the betting perspective, I just wanted to lay that out because that's one of my top sneaky spots.
No, I like that. I like that you added that in there. And which one of the receivers, before you break it down, which one of the receivers do you like the best? I have one in my mind, but I'm just curious which one because sometimes when the backup quarterback comes in, they have a different favorite receiver that they lock onto.
Yeah, I have not dug in yet to kind of where I want to go. I saw that he was targeting DD a lot, but that's probably going to be the top pick for everyone else. So I don't know if there's going to be a value guy that kind of jumps out at me in my research.
Personally,
you talked about one of the Jacksonville wide receivers a lot.
I mean, I mentioned him in May.
Very nicely. And he had a very nice breakout. So tell me about DJ Chark, man.
Yeah, DJ Chark. Chark was the guy that in the preseason when the Geek asked me about who my wide receiver sleepers are, he was the one at top of my list because I said he's literally probably one of the top 3 or 4 fastest guys in the NFL. And, they got rid of Blake Bortles, so everything's an upgrade. Now, if you're telling us that Mustachio is a dink and dunker. That definitely probably doesn't play into that sort of setup well, but I think he was bombing it a little bit too. I mean, I liked him. So who do you like again? To go back into the betting perspective, the line seems a little out of whack. I know that palaces have been built in Vegas with these lines, but is Houston just getting too many, giving up too many points?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're seeing. There's 45% of the bets have been placed on Jacksonville, but 85% of the money has been placed on Jacksonville. So they're seen as kind of a sharp play, and then the under is kind of where sharp bettors are going.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. I actually had it up on the screen incorrectly. It's Houston -9. So for those of you who, I already got some tweets saying, "Hey, you have it wrong." Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly, people. All right. So, and how about you? If you were putting a crisp $100 bill down, which side do you like?
I would probably put it on Jacksonville. I think that Houston is. I think they are an overvalued team based off of their game versus New Orleans. I think people overreact to games, and this is a spot where you can take a Jacksonville team that looked competitive against Kansas City for a good chunk of that game before they gave it away.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'm really interested to see what Jacksonville does this week. Geek, where's the DFS gems in this one? I can't imagine. I mean, Deshaun Watson, I think, is one of the best 2 QBs. He was getting crushed, sacked 6 times last night on Monday Night Football, but that guy just doesn't get phased. He stands in the pocket, he delivers, he throws to DeAndre Hopkins, who's covered, but it doesn't matter. The guy still rips the ball away from every receiver, even though he's covered. Who we playing?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do some contrarian stuff, I mean, you can play a guy like Nuke Hopkins against a cornerback like Jalen Ramsey. Like, you could do that, okay? You can, but the issue is that's just a contrarian play. Good players and bad matchups at home. Okay, we could play that a little bit, but realistically, no. This is an avoid game from a DFS perspective across the board. Houston defense is interesting here. Listen, I get Minshew. He's awesome. He's all Jacksonville all the time. He's got a porn stash. All of that is awesome. But this is not a good spot for any young quarterback going into Houston. It's a very loud place, a very, very tough defensive team that held, for a good part of the game, at least yesterday, held the Saints' explosive offense fairly in check. So, no, I'm not going to be excited about anybody on Houston, DJ Chark included. And I am not actually here excited, Jacksonville, and I'm certainly not excited for anybody in Houston as well. Like, again, tough corners. Are they going to throw to Duke? Is it going to be a defensive game? The total is low. Let's avoid this game and just be interested in more juicy ones.
All right, we
get to choose in DFS. So
that's what's so good about it, man. That's the best part of the game. All right, moving along. We got are we covering Monday night as well?
Yeah, let's do the whole thing.
Okay, so we got 4 games to cover. We got about 9 minutes to go. So that means we got to do 3 minutes on each game. Ryan, take your time. Give me a full analysis though on Indy at Tennessee. There can't be much here on the Tennessee side. -3 at home. Is this team for real? I mean, this one screams to me Indy. I think they're a good team.
Yeah, so there is not a ton of action going on either side of this game. We have pretty much, there is about 66% of the money of the bets have been on Tennessee, and 68% of the money is on Tennessee. So there's really no sharp action either way. Total the same way. It's gone up a little bit, but now there's some action on the under. So there's really nothing in this game.
The market is saying that these are even teams. Tennessee's just getting the standard 3 at home. I think, this is going to be a real test to see if Tennessee's defense is for real. Geek, does Tennessee's defense scare you off any of the Indy skill players?
No, I don't think they have a special defense. I do think for some reason these Tennessee games in general are just low scoring, but they just tend to be that way. But the Colts did not show a whole lot versus the run last week. So obviously with Eckler going bananas. So, Derrick Henry stands out a little bit. Marlon Mack here, also interesting for the Colts on the Colts side with Tennessee, also not being anything special defensively in my mind. So I think that this game is sort of an under the radar kind of, I'm not super interested in it type of game, but certainly last week we also saw T.Y. Hilton and A.J. Brown have both have pretty decent days. I think the AJ Brown day for 3 receptions, that was a little bit of fool's gold, and I'm not going to be chasing that too much. But T.Y. Hilton probably priced a little too high for what I'm looking for, but he certainly looked very good with Jacoby Brissett last week. So
how about Delaney Walker? Delaney Walker looked like he looked really good. I mean, and everyone hates him because he's old, but old tight ends generally age pretty well. I mean, from DFS, even though he had a big week, this seems like one that's not going to be highly owned. Can we put some Delaney Walker in our lineups?
You can have him in a couple lineups. Listen, he's as long as he's healthy and not, grimacing with every tackle and with every reception, he's a good player and he's an outlet for Mariota, and he's always done well in this offense. So sure, I didn't go to him last week, and obviously that was a shame because he fucking kicked ass. But at the same time, it's not like this guy, he's going to need touchdowns to make value. He caught, in order to get to 22 points last week, let's not go crazy. He caught 2 touchdowns. So let's take those 12 away, and he was a 10-point day. You know what I'm saying? So let's not go crazy. But at the same time, it's not like the Titans have other pass catchers that are really red zone kind of end zone targets. And
just so Ryan, just so you know that Geek and I all off season have had the Mariota versus Winston argument. I'm on the Mariota side. What not saying that he's a great player, just saying that there's not much difference between these two. They both have had disappointing careers. They were top picks. And I think that there was much more hype coming into this season on Winston because of the Bruce Arians offense injection. But so far, I'm up 1-0.
Mariota's not horrible, though. He's taken some teams to at least 500 records. Winston hasn't done anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that the market, hopefully it's finally coming around. And I think that that Mariota, when you talk about it, he likes Delaney Walker. I like his skill set. He hasn't stayed healthy, but enough about that one. This one to me has got to be a very interesting game. Kansas City, off an offensive explosion game, is now going to go into Oakland, who nobody expected to win last week. Oakland's getting 8.5 points at home. No Tyreek Hill in this game. The total's 52. What are the bettors doing with this game? Where's the line going? Are people bold enough to give 8.5 points? The line here is begging you to take Kansas City.
Yes. So what we see is kind of the main thing we see is that there are definitely over bettors. The line has already moved from 52 to 52.5. And like I said earlier in the show, when you have a line over 50 in September, it is very likely to go over. And so this is definitely a place where you want to game stack it. Last week, I made a comment that Patrick Mahomes in the big GPP on DraftKings was 8% owned. And if he's going to be around that same percentage in this game, I think this is a game stack. Put Patrick Mahomes up top and count your money later.
Now, Patrick Mahomes had a little bit of an ankle injury where he went out in the first quarter, got taped up. I was a little concerned because if he's not right, this whole offense just is not going to go. And I'm just, before we move on to the DFS perspective, the Geek, I want to tell Ryan about our preseason wager where we put $1,000 on the over Patrick Mahomes 35.5 touchdowns. Now I know.
Wait, Ryan is well aware of that bet because I also gave it out in Beat the Bookie, and Ryan actually scolded me for saying 20 units as if that was somebody's entire bankroll.
Okay,
said, I don't care.
Well, I'm curious of because I irrationally thought that this was a lock. Now I know there's no such thing in gambling, but regression. All the spreadsheet guys have said regression, but it doesn't always apply. I mean, this guy looks like literally the best. It could be the best quarterback in the history of the NFL when it's over. Not the most accomplished, but literally the best. So regression applies, but regression to what? Ryan, talk to me. Right. It's 35.5, the correct over under. Are we nuts that we just think that he's a lock for 38 plus?
No, I mean, if you think the line should be 38, then it's not terribly off. I mean, there's still a lot of difference there, but if that's kind of where you would have put the line, that's not horrible. I think, and this goes back to your guys' talk about my fantasy team. What is injury risk? A guy goes down on an ankle injury, the defender gets ejected from the game because of the hit, and you mess up his ankle and he's out for 4 games and you lose your over, or it's going to be close. So there's obviously injury risk of every player, and that's kind of where I think they have a more conservative line, because if they put it at 38, 39, most people are going to take the under, thinking that the only way he's going to make the over is being healthy all 16 games and performing out of his mind still.
Yeah, the thought process for us was because it was at -110, so we like the juice on it. And with all the new rules in the NFL, really that you just can't even touch the quarterback anymore, and quarterbacks are less likely to get injured than ever before in the history of the league. I mean, you could be suspended for multiple games and fined by putting a helmet just even on the wrong part of the chin of Patrick Mahomes. Now, there's also some risk here if the Chiefs are clinched the division in the last game, him just not playing. So, yeah, I mean, I was just curious. So you don't like that bet?
No, I think it's a great bet. I would not have put 20 units on it. The way that we do it in Beat the Bookie is we kind of signal a unit as 3 to 5% of your bankroll. So if you're betting 20 units, you're betting between 60 and 100% of your bankroll. So I'd rather you kind of diversify your investments coming from a financial background and maybe go 3 or 5 units on it and not risk all of it.
You know, that day after day after Geek suggested the 20 units, he also wanted to put another 40 units on Bitcoin. So I had to pull him back there too.
Oh, I bought the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I bought lots of Bitcoin.
All right, let's get into the good stuff. The DFS goodies here. Thank you, Ryan, for that, because I really was interested to hear your perspective on that prop bet. That was really insightful. Talk to me about the Oakland players first that we'd use, because I think we know about a lot of the Chiefs and who we should use is.
There's so much goodness in this game. I'm jumping out of my pants. Okay, I can't believe you waited till the end to talk about this game, which is like the most exciting. Number one, because Oakland's players were not repriced. They played on Monday night after the salaries came out. So what ends up happening is all of these guys that should be priced massively different are not. You've got Tyrell Williams, min salary almost. You've got Waller, the tight end, who looks like a fucking stud, almost min salary for this game. You've got the running back. I can't even remember his name. He was making me money last night. I came in second.
Josh Jacobs, you're talking about?
Jacobs. Jacobs priced ridiculously too low for the workload. John Gruden has said we're giving him 25 touches next week. Now, is Gruden a liar? I don't know. I kind of believe him. So I love everything to do with the Oakland offense in this game. They're at home. They're going to be playing from behind, and they're going to be trying to play catch up. He's going to hand it to the running back. They're going to throw it to the Gazelle. I mean, they're going to throw it to Waller. I love all of it. And I also love the fact that their other weapons all kind of suck. Hunter Renfrow, not that good. Ryan Grant, I would venture to say bad.
Wait, hold on. Slow down. Hunter Renfrow is a rookie.
I know, but I'm saying today, I'm not making judgments about the man's career. I'm saying this week 2 as a rookie, not that good. Not that good. Got a good personality, fun on Hard Knocks, but not that good yet.
And Hunter Renfrow, man, I mean, he's a gamer too. And I know what you're talking about just for this week, but he caught that winning touchdown from Deshaun Watson to win a national championship. This guy he just comes to play.
I don't care about that. All I care about is week 2, 2019 NFL football season. Not that good yet, right? So I know where the targets are going for Oakland. And as far as Kansas City goes, I remember last season, after a week 1 disappointing week for Travis Kelce, when everybody said, and I quote, "Oh, the no chemistry between Mahomes and Kelce. Don't play him." And your boy put in his notes, and I'll never forget, because it was one of my favorite calls of the whole year. I said, "I'm calling shenanigans on that narrative. Bullshit." Okay, this is Travis Kelce, and he went off for 36 points. In week 2, my man Cuckoo from DFS Army won $250,000 loading up Mahomes to Kelce in week 2 of the 2018 fantasy football season. And I'm expecting more of the same. I'm expecting a bounce back game for Travis Kelce here. Everybody's going to be on Sammy Watkins. Super chalk. Do with that what you will. But I'm also looking for the running back tandem on the Chiefs to actually produce quality results, potentially both of them. So lots of fantasy goodness going on in this game. Stack the shit out of it. There's enough salary savings on the Oakland side to stack up the Kansas City players. The only guy I'm not super interested in is Derek Carr because that guy fucking sucks.
Well, a question for you. You didn't name them by name, but are we chasing Sammy Watkins? And also with Tyreek Hill out, Mecole Hardman's ready to start. I mean, are we good with him? Are you interested in either of those guys?
Mecole Hardman's like that guy that you take a couple shares of because I'm trying to get that low-owned play in this game that everybody's going to be all over. But as far as I can see, he got 0 receptions last week. So
he wasn't
active?
But remember, Tyreek Hill was playing most of the game.
No, Hill went out early. Like, when did what happened after that? Where was Mecole Hardman if he's ready to play?
He wasn't part of the game plan, but he is starting this week. He's set to get the second most passing target, or second.
He's full blast starting. That is officially news. All right, so yes, we're going to want some Mecole Hardman for sure. Sammy Watkins is going to be chalk. I already said that. Sammy Watkins will be super chalk, and they jacked up his salary, rightfully so. We know Oakland's defense can't stop shit, and we also know that Kansas City is going to keep attacking. This could be the week, says, where we get 5 of those touchdowns towards our 35.5 touchdown goal for the season. And oh, by the way, you forgot to mention that line has already gone to 37.5 touchdowns, and it's minus 160 for the over. So I accept the sharpness of the bet regardless of what happens going forward, and I stand by putting your entire 20-unit bankroll on it.
He wanted to put his kid's college fund. I had to slow him down. Hey, just circling back to Ryan real quick.
Wait. Hold up a second. Hold up. Was I not allowed to buy that in my 529 C10 account? Because is there a restriction? Because I thought that was a sound investment. No,
I mean, let's hope it pays off because I'll just take my share of that 1,000. That's all I'm looking for. All right, Ryan, talk to me a little bit more. We were talking about props. Circle back and you said you had something you wanted to ask us about game props.
Yes. So I just wanted to give a quick plug that we have a new tool at DFS Army on the Beat the Bookie site that is open to anyone, DFS Army members or Beat the Bookie members, that goes and then calculates implied projections from player props that we get from all the different Vegas books. So it aggregates the props, combines into the best line, takes the juice, finds what the implied number would be, and then calculates a Draftkings or Fanduel projection based off of those numbers. And yesterday it went into effect, and it said that Waller would be the number 1 tight end. So I threw him in every single lineup, 770, 14 points, easy money.
Yeah, so what you're saying is from a DFS perspective, this is just another way to confirm. It's just another confirmation tool. If everything else lines up, this is a great way to confirm, like, hey, this guy is projected to do this. I think that's a really, really smart way to play DFS. Wow.
Here's the deal. Let me talk to that again, because this is a tool I've been dreaming about for years. Ryan, you don't convey excitement in the way that, like, it could be conveyed. I've been dreaming about this shit. What is the most solid projection in the world? It's when money is on the line, right? The Vegas props for players involve lots and lots of money being bet. Okay, they're very sharp, and if they're wrong, somebody's going to lose a lot of money. So there are a lot of players, not all. We do our projection systems. We have custom machine learning, all kinds of good shit going on, right, in the back end. But when we can add in and factor in when there are enough player props, and this year it's just starting to become a thing where there are enough player props on all of these players to actually create projections off them, because overseas books didn't really have it, but the US-based books, DraftKings, Fanduel, they're all about this shit, and money is being bet on it. So when you have enough of these props where I can get a touchdown prop, I can get a yardage prop, I can get a receptions prop, I can get everything I need for a player to create an actual projection, that to me is somebody asked, well, is it accurate or is it just what the public sees? It's accurate because public isn't a fucking idiot who's rooting for his team. The public is somebody with money who is betting it. And I'll give you an example. When I remember election night, Ryan was crying that night. But I remember election night 2016, Ryan in his hold up in Debo Chickacoop in the fetal position, right? But I'm like, all right, everybody talking shit on the news stations. Let me go to the betting channels and see what the fuck is going on. And as soon as you saw the money all of a sudden start pouring in on the Trump side, I was like, all right, now we have a resolution. Because until that money, that you had all these talking heads saying this or that, I don't believe you, motherfucker. All I care about is where is the money going. As soon as I saw, look at that line, minus 600. Holy shit.
Well,
Something's happening here. It took that.
You hit an
Where's
important
the
thing.
money go?
Having stake in the game is important to when you get your news, your media, your information. You always want to make sure that the person giving you information has stake in the game, and I think that's a really important point for DFS, for gambling, for politics, for anything.
Can we agree that it was funny that Ryan was nodding when I said he was holed up in the fetal position in Debo's chicken coop? Just no, it's not happening.
It happened though. It happened. All right. We got 2 more games to go, fellas. We got 2 more games to go. We're running a little long. We got New Orleans off one of the best games I've seen in a couple of years with an amazing finish last night on Monday Night Football. They're going to go visit the Rams. This is going to be a tough game. I think people are expecting an offensive explosion. I'm not so sure. This is a rematch of last year's NFC championship game. The Rams are getting the standard home field -3. The standard 3 points, under over 54. Talk to me a little bit, Ryan. Where are people going with this one? My first reaction is to take New Orleans on the road because I think these teams are even. What are the bettors doing?
Yeah, they're doing exactly what you say. They're taking New Orleans on the road. There's plenty of money on them. Then, like you said, most people are taking the under. What I would say, though, from a DFS perspective, because I watched the Rams game this past weekend, being a fan, is that Todd Gurley got almost every carry in the fourth quarter. So they're clearly going to use him in big games or when it matters the most. He did not show up much in the first half. He lost both of those touchdowns to Malcolm Brown. But this could be a place where you could get him at very low ownership where he could actually put up a solid game. But I'll let Kevin tell me how much I'm wrong.
Wait, just before that, that's a really interesting point because last weekend I was saying this is because nobody wanted Gurley because of the perceived knee issue. I thought it was a good spot. That only got confirmed. But do you think that Gurley is in jeopardy of losing these goal line touches because they are going to try to preserve him, for lack of a better word? They just don't want to. And even a couple of those great Gurley runs where he looked good, where he normally invited contact to get those 3 extra yards, he run out of bounds a few times. Do you see Malcolm Brown being a regular part of the goal line vulture?
In games where they know they're going to win.
Okay, so in games,
so like when they play Carolina on the road, and yes, it was a 3-point game, 3-point spread, but they had the game mostly in hand for the entire game. They felt fairly comfortable. They weren't really too worried. Bringing New Orleans to town, I expect a bigger workload for Gurley.
See, that's really interesting, and I want to hear what the Geeks take on that because we talked about this in the preseason, that Gurley was a bad season-long pick for that exact reason. Now, hearing Ryan talk about it really confirms that we didn't think that Todd Gurley wasn't a great player. We just weren't sure in these situations where the Rams had the game in hand, where normally he would get all the cleanup duty, that now it's going to go to those other running backs. And in games where they're favored by double-digit points, we might even see a DNP somewhere in week 7 or 8. Talk to me, Geek.
Fuck Gurley, man. Fuck Gurley. Okay? Are you crazy? How cute do we need to get? I already saw what they're going to do with Gurley in the first game, and that is they get close to they give him a couple touches, they get close to the goal line, he's out of the game. So am I going to pay $7,000 on Draftkings this week, or am I going to pay up on Fanduel this week for a guy who's splitting touches, who's not getting the important carries for his team, he's got a fucked up knee? It's not a perceived thing. It's clearly something, because this was a guy who they were giving 25 to 28 touches a game to in the past, and that's where he was doing all of his damage. He was a volume monster. And now how many touches did he get? 14? 14? I can get 14 touches out of like Mark Ingram.
Matt Breida.
For Matt Breida for 4K. I don't want 14 touches, and I don't want to give it up at the goal line. And they're not even throwing to him. So no, I'm not interested. Fuck Gurley.
A lot of Gurley's value did come in the passing game in years past, but I like what Ryan said. That's really interesting. It's the first. I listened to a lot of different analysts, and that he's the first person that talked about how Gurley got the carries when it mattered. Now, if this game is going to be close, we might see a 20 carry game. They might see this as this could be the possible 1 and 2 seeds in the NFC, and they might very well be playing for home field advantage in this game. So I like what Ryan said about that. maybe they give him a total rest in week 3, but this could be a 25 touch game with a low ownership. I think I'm going to have.
I remember in the playoffs, I had that same thought, like, they're not going to sit, they're not going to rest this guy. It's the fucking playoffs. And he keeps saying he's fine. And yet they played New Orleans in the playoffs, and it was CJ Anderson that went off in that game, not Todd Gurley. So listen, I don't trust these guys. I think they lie. I don't trust a word that comes out of their mouth. They told me the knee is fine in the playoffs last year. Gurley didn't get any touches. I kept getting sucked in. This is Todd Gurley. He's got to be good. And they kept doing the same thing. So insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping or expecting a different result. Gurley is not a volume machine enough to justify the salary. I'll take James Conner, the Terminator, for 200 less on DraftKings, or I'll take Chris Carson, or I'll take a Derrick Henry Marlon. There are so many better options than Todd Gurley in this very difficult matchup. Wait, do we think that the Saints are a pushover defense? They're very good against the run. Now, all that said, 54-point game total, monster potential here. I kind of think I like the Raiders-Chiefs game a little more. I'm not really sure, but this is the more competitive, high-scoring game on the slate. It is absolutely a stack-it-up scenario as well. We know that Michael Thomas is going to do his thing. We know that Alvin Kamara is going to go bananas here. Even Lats Murray is playable. On the other side of this game, it's always tougher with the Rams, but you got to like Cooper Kupp to stay away from sort of the quality outside cornerbacks that the Saints have on their offense. So you got to like a little bit of Cooper Kupp, maybe Brandon Cooks in the revenge. Can we even call it revenge at this point? Enough.
He's
right?
been on it. I mean, I love a good revenge narrative. I do love a good revenge narrative. And
revenge is such bullshit, though. It's so not a real thing.
I don't know. I mean, I hear people joke about it, but you are going to play a little harder sometimes when you feel like you've been traded away by a team you've been wronged. I mean, it might just mean something as simple as if you're a wide receiver blocking on the offside, or just
could be a little of that. Listen, I'm cool with it, but I haven't found it super predictive unless it's Steve Smith Sr. But I mean, Cooks is coming off of a really shitty game last week, and that's what he's going to give you. He's always a tournament-only player. 6 targets last week compared to Bobby Woods, who got you, I believe, 13 targets. So give me some Bobby Woods as the safer play. I like Cooper Kupp for the targets. Brandon Cooks is that sort of explosive GPP only. He's going to go off like when everybody zigs. You want to get a little bit of that zag. But outside of that, yes, stack the shit out of this game. 54-point total. Ryan, you said September 54-point totals play to the over more often than not. So let's hope this thing plays to the over. We'll stack up this game, and we'll also have lineups that are stacking the KC Oakland game. So in case one goes off and the other, we'll avoid those landmines a little bit by spreading our risk around, stacking up both games rather than just kind of mixing up players from both games all over the place in our lineups. That way, if one of the game busts a little bit, we won't hit that landmine with the other lineups from the other game.
All right. Well, we made it to the end. We got one more to go. We're about an hour and 50 minutes in. So I just
want to mention one last thing. Fuck Gurley.
Oh, wow. All right. Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
All right. So
music to my ears, Geek. I'm going to get him at low exposure.
I know you love to listen to my show just so you can do the opposite. So it's going to work out about 50% of the time, as this is all just guessing.
So Ryan, since he is gassing you up about Gurley, it's your time to make fun of the Geek and his New York Jets. Cleveland is going to go visit. They had a disappointing week 1. Going to go visit the New York Jets. And, I got to say, I got to give props to Adam Gase for respecting Jets tradition, giving away fourth quarter leads. He comes to town and, they always say when in Rome. And Adam Gase did not disappoint. He did exactly what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to blow leads in the fourth quarter. So props to him for respecting that tradition. Cleveland, the Jets getting 2.5 at home. I just think this one's mispriced. The Jets, they're fine. Getting points at home, though, it's an interesting thing. I thought that they would actually get a few more points. I'm on Cleveland on this one. I just think it was a bad week 1. I know that Cleveland is the off-season Super Bowl champion, but this seems like a little bit of an overcorrection. Talk to me about what the bettors are doing.
Yeah, so we're seeing a majority of the action coming on the under. People are expecting kind of a low-scoring game, that the Jets defense that we saw last week is going to hold up, very similar to what we saw. It's going to hold up. In terms of the Browns, their defense is studly. They gave up a ton of points in the fourth quarter to Tennessee. Sharp bettors don't really see that happening again. There's a ton of public money coming in on Cleveland, but this is my year of fading Cleveland, just because I think that they are everyone's darling, and everyone says it is easy to be the underdog and come back when you're the person that everyone's schedule is saying, oh, you guys look like you're having fun, drinking your beers and enjoying Cabo. Now let's go play football. Now that I'm going to circle you on my calendar and I'm going to beat you.
Yeah, so Cleveland being overrated is definitely been a popular theme by sharper players. I still think that they're better than what they showed there. And I just think that the Jets are, there was actually some talk that people thought the Jets could win this division this year. That quickly stopped after they got abused in the fourth quarter by Buffalo, and that Tom Brady just showed how dominant they're going to be again this year. I mean, I just want to ask you one prop. Is it automatic over the last decade? Just betting New England to win the AFC East is like free money, isn't it?
Betting New England to cover most games is basically automatic. They're ridiculous, like 60% against the spread. They just cover their games.
And what do you think the reason is? The reason because Bill Belichick being the smart is that even in the fourth quarter when they're up, they don't just do that kill the clock thing. They don't trade time for point. They step on the gas and they downfield even when they're up by like 12.
Yeah, I do think they do run the ball, and that goes to kind of how Kevin has seen of wanting to play kind of the bullheaded running back with the New England defense. But yeah,
you're in a little choppy, but you're.
There we go. How about now? Can you guys hear me? All right, Geek, go ahead, take it over.
Yeah.
And then Ryan, you're good. You're back. All right, Ryan, we missed what you said, so just talk to me quickly. Why do you think New England covers at such a high rate?
Yeah, I think that they just are better teams, and Vegas seems to misprice them. But I don't think it goes to them being kind of a fourth quarter team that runs up the score. I think that they usually have a bullheaded running back, and Kevin wants to play them and their defense combined, and that's usually a winning strategy. So I don't think it's them kind of running up the score like UCF does it because they need to score 80 points a game. I think they're just usually a better team, and they win divisions, and they're usually in a weak division.
Yeah, they're constantly just.
How do we get onto New England covering when we were talking about the Jets game? Where did we go? What is this? What are we talking about?
What Geek? Bring us home here. What fantasy players? And if you don't mind, just getting a little closer to that mic, Geek, and tell us what fantasy players on both sides, which Jets, Jamison Crowder, 17 targets, less than 100 yards, first time in NFL history that's ever happened. I love Crowder all off season. We talked about him, and I like him in the month of September until Chris Herndon gets back. Talk to me a little bit about him, specifically the Jets' weapons, and then talk about Cleveland.
Yeah, it's worth noting that the Jets traded for Demaryius Thomas. He's now a part of the team. Not much given up and not much excitement off of that move, but listen, the Gase offense was where Jarvis Landry made his bones as a sort of guy who would get 10, 15 receptions a game and never get to 100 yards. And I heard Gase talking about it in a press conference. Just as a Jets fan, you see these extra little pressers and stuff like that. And he was talking about that's an important role on his team, but he was saying how, with Jay Crowder being a little bit smaller of a guy than Jarvis Landry, he didn't think he could handle the kind of pounding, the kind of beating that Landry would take in these little crossing patterns where he'd just cross in front of the line, three or four feet in front of the line and just kind of do that. Now, one important note from the game but I do like anybody who gets 17 targets and is going to be super cheap like he is still on. Well, we'll see what his salary comes out to for the Monday games, but generally not an expensive player. We love him on a PPR site, and we're going to have lots and lots of Jamison Crowder exposure. I'll be starting him in teams where I have him on my fantasy bench because you just can't deny that target share, even if he's not doing that much with those targets. It's important to note that Le'Veon Bell was out there for every snap for the Jets last week. He is going to be a volume machine. This is not a Kenyon Drake Kalen Ballage, whatever situation. This is the Le'Veon Bell show situation, and I do like him in that game as well. Not much else going on for this Jets offense that you can get excited about. Robbie Anderson, not a whole lot last week, but he could break out at any time. So we'll see how he does. He'll be a popular play in the Monday night game. And on the flip side for Cleveland, listen, let's not overreact. They had a tough game. They came in. Here's the problem. You get a little cocky, right? You're Baker Mayfield, and all offseason, you're the toast of the town. You're getting poontang like nobody's business, just walking around, doing commercials. You're the big shit on campus, right? Meanwhile, like a Sam Darnold didn't get any of that kind of fanfare coming out last year as one of the other quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson didn't get any sort of fanfare, and neither did Josh Allen. But Baker Mayfield got all the fanfare. He started believing his own bullshit. And what happens when you believe your own bullshit is you come out and you look like shit. Like I'm fucking the man, I don't got to do nothing. And next thing you know, you look like shit. So hopefully that was a wake-up call for him in terms of his career and for Browns fans' sake. Not hopefully for my Jets. I want them to whoop on Cleveland this week. But I'm saying from a Browns fan perspective, don't overreact. I actually heard people saying, should I drop Baker Mayfield and pick up Gerald Minshew or whatever? And I'm like, are you fucking nuts?
People are crazy. I didn't realize how crazy the fantasy football world is until I started in your Slack chat with the most maniacal cockamamie subscribers ever. I mean, I love answering them. Don't get me wrong, but these guys want to drop like their first round pick in the minute the guy stubs a toe. So
am I dropping Chubb for Gio Bernard this week? But I'm saying Chubb will be fine. The whole Cleveland offense is going to be fine. I think everybody who thought Jarvis Landry was going to be really good this year, they were just mistaken in general. I never thought he was going to have a great year. I think Odell Beckham going to have his great games, but this is a team that's going to spread the football around. Njoku did really well last week, so expect a little bit more of that. I think if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on Cleveland here because it's the fucking Jets and they always lose, and whatever.
Your happiness. You're hedging your happiness.
No, I don't. I've lost my fandom. Part of being a DFS person is, your fandom is just like something that you had. I still root for my team, but I don't feel my happiness is when my fantasy team, when my DFS teams make money. I don't, that's what I care about. So I don't give a shit. My favorite player is Gronk, and whatever, he's on the Patriots. So I don't give a shit. But my point is, interesting game. I think it's going to be a fun Monday Night Football game. I'm excited to get to watch a full Jets game. My team, start to finish, which I rarely get to do with any games nowadays because I really try to watch highlights and, I can't watch every game start to finish. So I'm excited on the primetime game to get to watch that game start to finish. And as far as the fantasy assets, I'm going to be thinking that Cleveland will bounce back from their poor game and do better. And I actually think the Jets will bounce back from a poor offensive game as well and do a little bit better. But, if I had to choose one player to put in my captain spot, it's probably going to be Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, and I mean, we set out to do 30 minutes, but I loved hanging out with you guys for 2 hours. This was fun. I felt like, this is the kind of stuff that we do on the phone anyway. Why not bring it to the people? Ryan, thank you for joining us. Tell us real quick where the people can follow you on Twitter.
Well, what's my Twitter? It's DFS_FightOn 2016.
Okay.
And check us out at Beat the Bookie. It's our betting service. It's DFSArmy.com/beat-the-bookie.
And Ryan is very generous with his time over there. He loves offering his perspective. And from what I'm learning is that he is spot on a lot of his analysis. His process is just second to none. I mean, he's not going to guarantee you results because, again, it's gambling. Things happen. But if you follow his process, his way of he'll teach you how to think about these games in a way that you previously haven't thought of. He'll give you angles of the games that are unique to his algorithms and spreadsheets.
Let me break down a little bit. So what we do with Beat the Bookie, aside from there's three aspects to it. One is models, and Ryan comes from a quantitative hedge fund background and building quantitative models back testing them. So model-based predictions is key in the betting world. It's one thing to just watch a game. Oh, I think the Jets look good this week. But it's another thing to take all the, put models together that will actually handicap against the actual spreads and give you value differences. So that's a lot of what those models are doing. These are back tested, really awesome models for all these different sports. And Ryan talk a lot more about them within the Beat the Bookie group itself. But essentially, you combine models with a team of pros that are actually teaching the ins and outs of sports betting, understanding implied probabilities, understanding value, understanding plus and minus EV, all these important things that as sports gambling has become legalized in the United States, across these various states, everybody's kind of new to it. So you got to learn the ins and outs. We're starting a lot of people who haven't been like either regulars going to Vegas or, doing offshore books for the last few years or with a local bookie. People want to get into it. So it's important to learn the approach, how parlays work, and all these different things. So that's the key to the chat. We've brought the same concept that we have in DFS Army over to Beat the Bookie, which currently you can get to just by dfsarmy.com, clicking on the Beat the Bookie link. And eventually we are getting ready to launch a full blast new website with all kinds of tools and awesome stuff going on in the service.
And if you love the whole gambling aspect, not just, just for, he gets a really good insight. I just love the breaking down the numbers and the way they do it over there too. So I'm going to be on there a lot. You can get Ryan in the chat rooms a lot. Geek, we did it again. We hung out week 2. This has been enjoyable. You can find him at FFootballGeek on Twitter. He is all over the Slack chat for the DFS Army subscribers. If you don't have a subscription, you're seeing this on the public feed, make sure you check out dfsarmy.com. All the best DFS content. Now we have season-long content, gambling content, every sport you could think of. And what's really great and what I've been turned on to on the website is it's not just giving you the answer key to the test. It's teaching you how to think about these games in a unique way and to gain an edge. Gaining an edge in DFS is the most challenging thing. And that's what they're teaching you over DFS Army is gaining a positive EV towards winning. And the results are there. You become a better player over time by talking to the coaches over there, by reading the content and interacting with the community. And that's really what it is. Anything else, it's just check it out. Is there any promos going on? Can they sample the site at all right now?
We actually have, we've extended our NFL kickoff promotion at dfsarmy.com. So if you've made it this far into this pod, good news. We extended the kickoff promo code. And how that works is, DFS Army has one price, all sports. We don't charge people separate: college football, college baseball, college, NFL, WNBA. No, we cover every single sport. And as a matter of fact, I think there is no comparable to us, particularly when it comes to the niche sports, be it NASCAR, college football. Like those are where we really have the biggest edge because we put a ton of effort into niche sports where other sites don't. But you can go to dfsarmy.com, click on VIP monthly subscription, and you use promo code KICKOFF, KICKOFF. It locks you in for 20% off. It's normally $49.99 a month, but through the next week, it's going to be down to $39.99 a month. Not just the first month, but locked in for as long as your subscription remains active. We are a year-round site. There is never a time when we don't have 3 or 4 sports going on for daily fantasy, and we have over 50, 60 staff breaking down all these different sports, actual DFS pros, cheat sheets, notes, chat in the chat rooms, incredible projections. Our domination station optimizer is unmatched. Our research station is ridiculous. Every single sport has a research station. So really good stuff.
I'll be handling the off-season dynasty football stuff there as well. So, all right, for the Geek, for Ryan, Mr. FightOn 2016, I am season Long Sez at Alan Seslowski. Check me on Twitter and in the Slack chat on the DFS Army. Till next time, boys. Next week, say peace and love.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, guys.